The champagne was already chilling in my office fridge when they walked in. 24 hours. That's all I had left at Meridian Financial Solutions before my retirement party. 43 years of my life poured into this company, and I was finally going to walk away with my head held high and my pension secure. The irony wasn't lost on me that the biggest deal of my career was about to close on my very last day. I should have known something was wrong when CEO Bradford Henley himself knocked on my door at 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday. He never came to the 32nd floor unless someone was getting fired or the building was on fire. His face wore that practiced corporate smile that made my stomach turn. "Robert, we need to talk." Behind him stood a young woman I'd never seen before, probably in her mid-20s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. She clutched a leather portfolio like it contained state secrets. "Of course, sir. Please, come in." I gestured to the chairs across from my desk, the same desk where I'd negotiated hundreds of millions in deals over the decades. Henley didn't sit. Neither did she. "Robert, I want you to meet my niece, Victoria Henley Cross. She's just completed her MBA from Wharton and will be taking over your position effective immediately." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I'm sorry. What?" "The Yamamoto Industries deal," he continued as if I hadn't spoken, "will be Victoria's first major transaction. Consider it a baptism by fire." I felt my face flush hot. The Yamamoto deal. My deal. The one I'd spent 18 months cultivating, nurturing, and bringing to the verge of completion. $100 million in investment capital that would cement Meridian's position in the Asian markets for the next decade. "Bradford, with all due respect, that deal is incredibly complex. The cultural nuances alone took me months to navigate. Yamamoto-san specifically requested to work with me personally." Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the entitled confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "I'm sure I can handle whatever challenges arise. Uncle Brad, how hard can it be?" Uncle Brad. I wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in my throat. "Robert," Henley said, pulling an envelope from his jacket, "we're prepared to offer you a generous severance package, 6 months' salary, plus your full pension benefits. You can clean out your office tonight." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a termination letter dated that very day, along with a non-disclosure agreement and a check that was supposed to make me grateful for being stabbed in the back. "The Yamamoto meeting is tomorrow at 2 p.m., Victoria said, already flipping through files on my desk like she owned them. "I assume all the documentation is in order?" I stared at this girl, this child who was about to destroy the most important deal of my career, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "The documentation is extensive, very particular." "Perfect. I'm sure it's all straightforward." If only she knew. That night. I sat in my empty office at 11 p.m., surrounded by boxes and memories. 43 years of my life reduced to cardboard containers, photos of successful deals, awards, handshakes with executives from around the world, all of it meaningless now. But as I packed, I couldn't stop thinking about the Yamamoto deal, about the months of careful relationship building, about the specific protocols, the cultural expectations, the delicate balance of respect and business acumen required to work with Kenji Yamamoto. Most importantly, I thought about the one crucial detail that wasn't in any of the files Victoria had so eagerly claimed. The next morning, I watched from the lobby coffee shop as Victoria strutted into the building at 9 a.m. sharp, her confidence radiating like heat from a furnace. She had no idea what was coming. At exactly 2 p.m., I received a text from my former assistant, Sarah, who'd worked with me for 12 years. The Japanese delegation just left. Victoria looked like she'd seen a ghost. Meeting lasted exactly 7 minutes. I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. By 3 p.m., the entire 32nd floor was buzzing. Word traveled fast in corporate environments, especially when it involved the spectacular failure of the CEO's niece. Sarah texted again. "Yamamoto Industries just pulled the entire deal. They're calling it a profound cultural insult." The thing about Kenji Yamamoto that wasn't written in any file The thing I'd learned through months of careful observation and relationship building was that he was a traditional man who valued respect above all else. When meeting new business partners, he always performed a specific ritual. He would bow slightly and present his business card with both hands, expecting the same in return. But more than that, he would always begin meetings by asking about the person who had referred him to the company. In this case, that was me. He would want to know how I was doing, where I was, and why I wasn't personally handling such an important transaction. Victoria, with her MBA confidence and her uncle's nepotism, had no idea. She probably strutted into that meeting, gave him a firm handshake American style, and launched straight into business. When he inevitably asked about me, she likely dismissed the question, or worse, revealed that I'd been terminated just to make room for her. To a man like Yamamoto, this wasn't just unprofessional, it was insulting. It suggested that Meridian Financial Solutions didn't value the relationships that had brought the deal to fruition in the first place. By 4 p.m., Bradford Henley was standing in the lobby, his face red with rage, screaming into his phone. I couldn't hear the words, but I could imagine them. $100 million gone. Victoria stood nearby, no longer the confident young executive from yesterday. She looked small, deflated, like a balloon with a slow leak. The beautiful thing about corporate environments is that news travels at the speed of light, especially bad news involving the boss's family. By the end of that day, everyone at Meridian knew that the CEO's niece had single-handedly destroyed the biggest deal in the company's recent history. But I wasn't done. Over the next week, I made some phone calls. After 43 years in the business, you accumulate a lot of contacts. People who owe you favors, people who respect your judgment, people who are very interested to know when a major financial services firm makes catastrophic errors in judgment. I called David Richardson at Sterling Capital, one of Meridian's biggest competitors. David, you might want to reach out to Yamamoto Industries. I hear they're looking for a new financial partner in the American market. I called Linda Chen at Financial Times. Linda, there might be an interesting story developing at Meridian Financial Solutions, something about nepotism and lost deals. I called my former clients, the ones who'd worked with me for years and trusted my judgment. I'm retiring, I told them, but I wanted to give you a heads up about some changes at Meridian that might affect your portfolios. Within 2 weeks, the ripple effects were undeniable. 3 major clients pulled their accounts, citing concerns about Meridian's change in leadership quality. The Financial Times ran a piece about nepotism in corporate America, with Meridian featured prominently as a case study. Sterling Capital announced they'd secured a major new partnership with a prominent Japanese industrial firm that everyone in the industry knew was Yamamoto Industries. But the most satisfying call came on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after my termination. It was Sarah, barely containing her excitement. Robert, you're not going to believe this. Victoria just got fired. Henley called her into his office this morning, and she came out 10 minutes later with a box. Security escorted her to the elevator. I felt a deep satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. What about Henley himself? I asked. The board is meeting Monday. Word is they're not happy about losing the Yamamoto deal, or the other clients that have been leaving. Stock price is down 12% this month. That weekend, I made one more call. This one to James Morrison, chairman of Meridian's board of directors. James and I had worked together for 15 years before he moved to the board. He was a good man, a fair man, and someone who valued loyalty and competence over politics. James, it's Robert. I hope you don't mind me calling. Robert, hell, I was just thinking about you. Heard about your retirement. Sorry it didn't go as smoothly as it should have. And that's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to make sure you had all the facts about the Yamamoto situation. We talked for an hour. I told him everything. About the sudden termination, about Victoria's lack of preparation, about the cultural insensitivity that had cost the company not just one deal, but its reputation in the Asian markets. I didn't have to embellish or exaggerate. The facts spoke for themselves. Monday morning brought news that sent shockwaves through the financial district. Bradford Henley had been voted out as CEO by Meridian's board of directors, effective immediately. The official statement cited concerns about leadership decisions and their impact on company performance and reputation. Victoria's tenure at Meridian had lasted exactly 3 weeks and 1 day, but the story doesn't end there. 2 months later, I was enjoying my actual retirement, spending time with my wife, traveling, playing golf. I'd almost forgotten about Meridian entirely when I received a call from James Morrison. "Robert, I have a proposition for you." It turned out that Meridian's new CEO was struggling to repair the damage caused by the Henley regime. The company had lost more clients. Several key employees had jumped ship to competitors, and their reputation in international markets was in shambles. "We need someone to come in as a consultant," James explained. "Someone with credibility, experience, and the relationships to help us rebuild. The board specifically requested you." The irony was delicious. They wanted me back, not as a regular employee, but as a high-paid consultant with complete autonomy and the authority to rebuild the international division from scratch. "What would the compensation look like?" I asked, already knowing I was going to accept. $200,000 for a 6-month contract, plus a percentage of any new business you bring in. "And Robert, we'd like you to lead the effort to win back Yamamoto Industries." I accepted the offer, but not for the money. I accepted because I wanted to see Meridian succeed despite the damage caused by Bradford Henley's nepotism and poor judgment. And I wanted the satisfaction of rebuilding what had been torn down. My first day back was surreal, walking through the same halls, past the same offices, but now as an outside consultant rather than a longtime employee. The remaining staff greeted me like a returning hero. Sarah, who had thankfully kept her job despite the chaos, actually hugged me in the elevator. "Mr. Thompson, everyone is so happy you're back. We've missed your leadership." My temporary office was on the 34th floor, 2 levels higher than my old office. From the window, I could see the entire city spread out below me, including the building where Sterling Capital had housed their new Japanese partnership. The first thing I did was call Kenji Yamamoto directly. "Yamamoto-san, this is Robert Thompson. I wanted to personally apologize for the unfortunate events during our last scheduled meeting." His voice was warm but cautious. Thompson-san, I wondered what had happened to you. The young woman who came to our meeting seemed unprepared. I was terminated unexpectedly just before our meeting. I had no opportunity to properly transition the relationship or ensure cultural protocols were followed." There was a long pause. "I see. This explains much. In our culture, such treatment of respected partners is concerning. I understand completely. I wanted you to know that I'm now working with Meridian again, in a consulting capacity, and I would very much like the opportunity to restore our business relationship." Another pause. "You are no longer with Sterling Capital?" That was news to me. Apparently, Sterling hadn't been entirely honest about their new Japanese partnership. "No, Yamamoto-san, I have been in retirement. Sterling Capital approached you independently." "Yes, they suggested you had recommended our partnership with them. This was incorrect?" I felt anger rise in my chest, but kept my voice calm and professional. "That was not accurate. Yamamoto-san, I would never make such a recommendation without consulting with you directly first." The conversation continued for 20 minutes. By the end, we had scheduled a proper meeting for the following week, with all appropriate protocols observed. That meeting led to a restructured deal worth $120 million, 20% more than the original agreement. Yamamoto Industries agreed to an exclusive partnership with Meridian, specifically requesting that all future dealings go through me personally. Over the next 4 months, I brought in 3 more major international clients, restored relationships with 2 former clients who had left during the Henley chaos, and established Meridian as the premier choice for Asian market investments on the East Coast. My 6-month consulting contract was extended to a full year, with an option for renewal. The percentage of new business I'd negotiated meant my total compensation was approaching $500,000, more than I'd ever made as a regular employee. But the real satisfaction came from the knowledge that excellence and integrity had triumphed over nepotism and arrogance. One afternoon, about 8 months into my consulting contract, I was having lunch at the Metropolitan Club when I spotted a familiar figure at the bar. Bradford Henley sat alone, nursing what appeared to be his third or fourth whiskey. I debated whether to approach him, ultimately deciding that ignoring him would be more satisfying than any conversation we might have. But as I walked past his table, he looked up. "Robert," his voice was slurred, his suit wrinkled, his face showing the wear of someone whose world had collapsed around him. "Bradford, I suppose you're happy now." I stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "Happy about what?" "About what happened to me, to Victoria." I studied his face, seeing not the arrogant CEO who had fired me 24 hours before retirement, but a broken man who had finally faced the consequences of his choices. "Bradford, I'm happy that Meridian is succeeding again. I'm happy that good people have good jobs and that clients are being served properly. What happened to you was a result of your own decisions." He laughed bitterly. "You really think it was all my fault?" "I think you made a choice to value family connections over competence and experience. I think you insulted valued partners and damaged important relationships. I think you forgot that respect is earned, not inherited. Victoria is a smart girl. She just needed time to learn. Victoria might be intelligent, but intelligence isn't enough. Experience matters. Relationships matter. Cultural sensitivity matters. You can't hand someone a $100 million deal and expect them to figure it out through trial and error." Henley drained his glass and signaled the bartender for another. "So what now? You've won. You've gotten your revenge. Are you satisfied?" The question caught me off guard. Was this revenge? Had I set out to destroy Bradford Henley and his niece, or had I simply tried to preserve my own dignity and protect the company I'd served for 43 years? "Bradford, I never wanted to hurt you or Victoria personally. I wanted to do my job well, finish my career with dignity, and see Meridian continue to succeed. When you made that impossible, I did what I had to do to protect my reputation and the relationships I'd built over 4 decades. By sabotaging the Yamamoto deal. By allowing the Yamamoto deal to proceed without the preparation and cultural sensitivity it required, Victoria's failure wasn't my fault. It was the inevitable result of putting an inexperienced person in a situation they weren't ready to handle." He stared into his whiskey glass. "The board won't even take my calls anymore. What are you doing now?" "Nothing. Nothing at all. Victoria moved back to California. She's working for some tech startup, making a quarter of what she was making at Meridian. My brother won't speak to me. Says I ruined his daughter's career." I felt a moment of sympathy for the man, despite everything that had happened. "Bradford, you're 58 years old. You have experience, connections, knowledge. This doesn't have to be the end of your career. Who's going to hire the CEO who destroyed a $100 million deal through nepotism? Someone who values honesty and lessons learned, someone who needs a leader who understands the consequences of poor judgment." I left him there at the bar and walked back to Meridian, thinking about the strange turns life can take. 6 months earlier, I'd been a bitter, angry man who felt his life's work had been dismissed and discarded. Now I was more successful than I'd ever been, with the respect of my peers and the satisfaction of work well done. That evening, I called my wife and told her I was ready to come home. "How did the meeting with the Singapore clients go?" she asked. "Better than expected. The partnership is moving forward, and they're interested in expanding the relationship next year." "That's wonderful, dear. Are you happy with how everything turned out?" I thought about the question as I looked out my office window at the city lights below. Was I happy? Bradford Henley's life was in ruins. Victoria's promising career had been derailed. Meridian had survived and thrived, but at significant cost to the people involved. "I'm satisfied," I told her. "I'm satisfied that the right things happened for the right reasons." "And you're ready to actually retire this time?" I laughed. "Yes, I think I am. This contract ends in 4 months, and I'm not renewing it. It's time to start the next chapter." "Good. I've been planning our trip to New Zealand. I think you'll love it there." As I hung up the phone, I realized that revenge, if that's what this had been, wasn't really about destroying your enemies. It was about proving that integrity and competence matter more than connections and politics. It was about showing that respect must be earned, that relationships have value, and that shortcuts often lead to dead ends. Victoria Henley Cross learned that an MBA from Wharton doesn't automatically grant you the wisdom that comes from decades of experience. Bradford Henley learned that loyalty flows both ways, and that betraying trusted employees has consequences that extend far beyond the immediate situation. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply being better at your job than the people who try to replace you. The Meridian Financial Solutions story became something of a legend in our industry. It's told in business schools now as a case study in corporate governance, nepotism, and the importance of cultural sensitivity in international business. The lesson most students take away is about the dangers of replacing experienced professionals with unqualified relatives. But the real lesson, the one that's harder to teach in a classroom, is about dignity, about standing up for yourself when you're treated unfairly, but doing it in a way that serves a greater purpose than just personal satisfaction. I could have walked away quietly, taken my severance package, and disappeared into retirement. Many people would have. Instead, I chose to fight back, not through lawsuits or public tantrums, but through excellence and professional relationships built over a lifetime of honorable work. In the end, that made all the difference. My last day at Meridian as a consultant was nothing like my last day as an employee a year earlier. This time, there was a proper farewell reception on the 34th floor. Colleagues, clients, and even some competitors came to wish me well. Kenji Yamamoto sent a beautiful arrangement of flowers with a note that read, "To a true professional and honored friend." Sarah, my longtime assistant, presented me with a leather-bound book containing letters from clients and colleagues from around the world. Inside the front cover, she'd written, "Thank you for showing us that integrity never goes out of style." As I cleaned out my office for the second and final time, I found myself thinking about the champagne that had been chilling in my refrigerator that Thursday afternoon when Bradford Henley knocked on my door. I'd thrown it away that night in my anger and disappointment. This time, I'd brought a bottle of Dom Perignon 1996, a vintage that had been aging as long as my career at Meridian. I opened it as the sun set over the city, toasting not to revenge accomplished, but to a career well-lived and dignity preserved. The next morning, my wife and I flew to Auckland to begin our long-delayed retirement adventure. As the plane lifted off from JFK, I looked down at the city that had been my professional home for more than 4 decades and felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunities I'd been given, for the relationships I'd built, for the challenges I'd overcome, and yes, even for the betrayal that had led to the most satisfying year of my professional life. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just being so good at what you do that the people who tried to replace you end up begging you to come back. And sometimes that's enough.